Oh, move away.
Welcome to Europa. Hi everyone, welcome to my very first tutorial. Today I'm going to go through some of the basics of IC and Stationeers. I'll be joined by my wife who has touched on IC a little bit, but hopefully she'll learn something from this. A quick disclaimer, I'm not an expert and how I explain things isn't necessarily how you or anyone else would. It's going to be a bit different and we're going to do it from Sophie's perspective. So yeah, let me know what you think and let's get to it. So this is a bit of a different kind of video. It's not going to be a playthrough. I basically thought it was about time. I don't know where she's gone. I thought it was about time that I just kind of went through the very basics of IC with my wife. So it's going to serve as a
Your
bit of a.
wife has a name.
Would you like me to
What
give
was what
everyone your
was the
name?
need for that?
Would you like me to give everyone your name?
No, carry on.
No, my wife. Um, so yeah, it's going to serve as a kind of tutorial. Hopefully, it'll help other people. We'll see. It's going to be very basic, and it's going to come across a little bit. And I forgot the word again, love.
Patronising.
Patronizing. That's the word. Thank you. But we'll see what happens. Obviously, if you've got any questions, just let me know. There's going to be some practical as well, so it's not just going to be me talking. So we'll kind of see how this goes as a tutorial goes. So obviously you've kind of had a play with some of the basic IC, haven't you? So you kind of understand some of the basics, but we'll go over it anyway. So Stationeers, obviously, so the code is called IC10, but there's a real life code called MIPS, and that's what it's loosely based on. You can
Oh, I didn't
Google
know
it.
that.
Yeah, you can Google it, but it's not like they have to write like function and then what you wanted to do, and like some of the ifs are a bit more to what you'll be familiar with.
So what else?
Um,
What uses MIPS then?
I don't know. You'd have to Google it. I'm not sure. I just know that it's loosely based on that. It's not a language I've ever used. Um, but yeah, bit of random information for you.
How did you find that out?
Wikipedia. So if you come over here,
I think you should have a trust Wikipedia.
it's like the Stationeers wiki. So there's a link
Oh,
here. So for anyone, basically what I'm going to go through is kind of mentioned here anyway. So feel free to go to that. But if you're like a silly person trying to explain things in a stupid manner, then stick around. Okay, so obviously you've done some coding, so you understand this. But basically, when you're writing coding, you deal with registers. So they're like your variables. So you have between R0 and R15. So you know how to do them, don't you? So like you would load into a register from a device.
yeah, but
Um,
I thought like the variable was when you alias it first. Well,
so
that was like a variable.
so I've put up here. So aliasing is basically you just giving a name to something. That's all aliasing does. So for example, on the IC housing, obviously you attach a device to the pin.
Mhm.
Um, Now, if you didn't alias in your code, you would have to go, load into a register from device 0 the pressure, but you don't know what D0 is. You've got no idea. So when you're reusing your code, you then have to try to remember what D0 was. So that's why you alias. By aliasing as well, whenever you obviously when you're setting up your pins, it'll give you the name it's looking for because you've aliased it. So it helps you set that up a little bit easier. That one's not plugged in, but we'll go through a few later. Um, so yeah, R0 they are your internal registers. So they're what are used to store information. You can manipulate information in those registers, etc. Device registers are your D0 to D5, so you've got 6 in total. Um,
Well, don't it depend what device you're using? Like this was only got two.
Correct, yes, that's why I put that there as an example. So if you were writing
Sure.
code in here, so you've obviously got your D0 and your D1 for 2 devices, and you also have DB. So DB is the device in which you've put the chip in. So if you put the chip
Can
in
you do
here,
that with the housing as well?
yes, so DB would be the circuit housing. So if you point at the where it's a circuit housing at the top, it'll say state 0. So when you write to the setting of the housing, it would read on that state there. When you're working with filters and ACs, obviously you can write to all the properties of the filter or the AC. So talking
So
of,
if you was using a filter
mm-hmm,
or the air conditioner, whatever it is you got down,
yep,
if you wrote to DB, would you just be telling the filter what to do? So you don't have
yes,
to put the filter like on D0 or D1.
no, the filter is dB. So the
Okay.
housing doesn't really have too much. So if you press
So
F,
do you alias DB?
you don't need to alias dB because dB is just the device. You know what dB is.
But can you if you wanted to?
I don't know.
Okay.
I guess there's
Sorry.
no reason why you couldn't because alias is just giving it a name, so you probably could, if that would help you in your code. So if you go into your Stationpedia by pressing F1
Mm.
and then search for housing, and then you're looking for the IC housing.
Yep.
Obviously, the logic that you've got like power, error, setting, required power, blah blah blah. All of
Mm.
that stuff you could read and you can either read or read and write to the DB. So
So read means you're just reading it. What's read write? You can write to it and change it.
yeah, so read means, so for example, I can read the power from the DB. No, hang on. I can read the required power. So I can see how much it needs to run. But I can't write that. I can't tell it how much power to use. That's just a read thing. The on off, obviously I can read and write. So I can read if it's on, and I can also write to it and tell it to either go on or off.
So what can you write to its setting?
So the setting is anything. So what you could do is like save to the housing, the setting, and then a number. So normally what you can do, let's say you had an IC, I mean, we'll go through this a little bit later, but basically say you had an IC that was reading the temperature from a sensor and your sensor was outside.
So IC is the chip, yeah?
So the circuit is the chip, the IC housing is this.
So when you're saying IC, are you talking about the housing or the chip?
When I say just IC, I mean the code.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
you can write to the housing, so on to the save to the DB, which would be this because you put the circuit in it,
Mm-hmm.
to the setting property, and then you
Mm-hmm.
save to that whatever you want. So if you could have a sensor outside that you want to read the temperature from. If you haven't got a console, to read that temperature, you have to go outside to the sensor and point at it,
Yeah.
and you'll get the thing. But what you can do is you could load from the sensor, and then you could save that to the setting of the housing. So then when you were just pointing at the housing, you'd also get the temperature. So you don't have to use a console if you don't want to. You could just do it on the housing.
What does that middle sign mean? Devices, registers, used to read and write to and from
So
devices.
your R0 to R15 are called they're your internal registers. They're used within your code for you to do whatever you need to do, save to them, write to them, whatever. The device registers are your D0 and D5. They're external. So D0, you would put a device on D0, and
Oh, so they're the pins.
yes,
Yeah.
the device register is basically the pin, the device that's connected to the pin.
That you just change with a screwdriver.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And it's just important to note, obviously you have to use the screwdriver because the IC doesn't actually understand what it's connected to. As far as the IC housing is concerned, the IC within it, it is just communicating with that pin. It has no idea what's on that pin. So there are occasions where, for example, say you had a door, and you say you wanted to try and save the open and close of the door. You could technically, when the code will let you do this, is save to the door the temperature of 1. Your code isn't going to error until you try and turn it on. The IC will allow you to type that in, and it won't tell you that's a problem until it tries to communicate with the pin, because then it'll be like, hang on a second, the door, whatever device I've got on D0 doesn't have a temperature value. So then it's going to error. So just kind of bear that in mind, that your code doesn't know what it's communicating with. All it knows is, okay, I need to do something to that pin. Yeah?
But you'll know when you turn it on. When you've set all the pins up, you turn it on, it flashes, doesn't it? So you know something's wrong.
It'll flash, for example, temperature doesn't appear on the door. But
So in your code, you can physically write that, and it won't tell you no, it's wrong.
it won't tell you it's an error because temperature exists in
Okay.
the code dictionary. But it doesn't know that the device you're saving to doesn't have that until you're running it. So up at the top,
What's
sorry.
RA/SP?
So we haven't got onto those. So basically,
Sorry.
no, it's fine. So SP we're not really going to touch on because that's SP to your stack pointer.
What's that?
So think of a stack as a single column table. And
Right.
what you can do in your stack is you can add multiple records in that stack, and then you can move through it and do things. So, for example, if you had, say, you've got an autolathe, and you want to keep it stocked up on ingots, and you've got like a vending machine somewhere. In the stack, you would save the hash of every single ingot that's available, just in the game. And then what you would do is, okay, let's move, and we're not going to go through how you do it, but what you do is like, okay, I want to get to the first record in the stack, and I want you to check, do you have this hash? If it's fine, okay, let's move the stack down one. Now,
Do you have this hash? What do you mean?
so if you search for iron in your Stationpedia and find the iron ingot, and you'll see that you've got the prefab hash.
Oh yeah.
So that's the code that you'll find on every single item in the game. So the frames, the lights, the ingots, the printers, everything has a hash. So what you do is you populate your stack with all the different hashes. So I don't know how many there's. I think there's about, I'm going to say 16 maybe ingots. I'm pulling that number out my arse. So you'd have a stack of 16 ingots, different types of ingot, and you have your code cycle through that stack.
Is 18.
Okay, 18. So the first one, iron. Okay, so the stacks are iron. Do I have 50 iron? If yes, you go, right, code, can you change the stack? Let's go to the next one. Okay, do you have 50 of this? And that's kind of how you do those. Rather than you having to write like a line for, okay, find this hash, because your code would be too big. You just work through a table of data
Okay.
and incorporate that into your code. Now, it's not something we've touched on, and we're probably not going to do for a while, because there's
So it means you don't have to do loads of ifs as well, doesn't it?
I mean, there's not really ifs in this, but like you're greater than, you're
Oh.
less than, branching, all that kind of stuff. You still probably use that, but your stack will allow you to simplify your code to a degree. But stacks are a bit more complex. We're not going to worry too much about that. RA is used by certain commands. So, for example, so you know how to jump, yeah? We can
What
put
does it stand for?
row address, I think. I might be making that up.
Putting
But
you on the spot
basically,
now.
so when you look in your code, come over here a second. Spoiler alert. So when you go into your code, you've obviously got all the line numbers on the left hand side, 0 to I think it's 255. I think it goes down to nope 127. I lied. There are a number of commands inside the code in which you can jump to a part of your code and then store the next line into RA. So for
Yeah.
so say for example there's a function in there, sorry, called, well, you write it as BGT, which stands for branch greater than. So if something is greater than something, go to this line. If you put AL at the end of that, so you get BGTAL, it's exactly the same, branch greater than. So if this number is greater than this, branch to this number, the AL will then store the next number, the next row number into RA. And what that allows you to do is you can then jump to RA to take you back to where you were. So so I showed you a little bit of that when I was doing my Larry on Venus.
When I fixed it for you, do you mean?
When you fixed it for me, yeah. Spoiler alert, my wife helped me. So yeah, so you'll do some code and you want to come back to where you've just left. But you
So can you put AL at the end of anything? Or only certain things?
not everything. So if you go to a computer or a laptop and click on your little F button. I don't know if it'll let me just do so.
F button.
Top right corner. So in the computer you've got an SX, an X, and an F.
Oh.
So the F lists all the functions available to you.
Why didn't you tell me about this?
This is what we're doing now, my darling. So if you search for, so obviously you can search in here for whatever, and there are tons of functions.
I can't search just AL.
No, because AL probably exists in every single one. But if you search for relative,
Right.
um, wait, not AL. Search for. Oh, actually, maybe search for RA. No, that's not going to work. Store. Ah, yeah. Search for the word store. So you'll
Okay.
see you've got, for example, the fourth one down. You've got BEQAL. Now BEQ is just branch if equal to, and then you put the AL on the end, and that will store the number in RA. So most of these all end in AL, apart from when you get down to like poke and stuff. But the top ones are
So
basically
basically, they're moving around the code, but based on something. Or
they. So if you didn't put the AL, you can still move to a different part of the code. But by putting the AL, you store whatever
you
the next.
store that
If
number
it
if you want to
didn't
come
jump,
back.
if it wasn't going to jump, what was the next line it was going to deal with?
Why? Why would you use that?
So a use case would be.
As in, why would you want to store the line you're at?
So let's say I've got a length of code that I'm working on. The Larry is a good example to this. So because it's a moving system, you need time for the Larry to do something before you move on to the next bit of code. So let's say you've got all your code top to bottom. Inside that code, there's a bit where you jump to a separate segment where you're just checking if the Larry is waiting for something. So if it's not moving, the Larry has like an idle state. What we'll do is we'll jump onto Venus after this if you want, and I can quickly show you.
That's the one that was for harvesting your crops, the Lara.
Yes, correct. So when you
Am I
tell
going to need to put a fresh battery in?
you're on creative mode, you'll be fine.
Oh,
Um,
it's just going to flash at me.
yeah, I mean, if you want to, let's learn about creative mode. Press your slash, forward slash,
Oh.
search for battery.
Oh, is
And
this how you like cheat stuff in?
yeah, this is creative mode. And then if you scroll down, you'll see nuclear battery. Just click on the plus button next to it. I spawned one of them and you didn't do two, and then just put that in your suit if you want.
Oh.
And that
Just,
is how you
is there
spawn.
not like a creative mode where you don't have to worry?
You don't have to worry. If it runs out, you're not going to die. It doesn't matter.
No, it's going to flash at you.
Yeah, but a nuclear battery's going to last forever, so you're fine.
How do I chuck?
Like that. Whee. Anyway, off topic. Yeah, so on the Larry, so there's going to be parts of your code where you tell it to do something, and then you want to wait for it to finish what it's doing before you move on. So you'll have a separate part of your code, and that bit of code will be solely responsible for just waiting for it. That segment will jump to RA, which will take you back to where you were, and it will continue the code.
Why? I don't know if this is a stupid question, but why do you jump to another piece of code to do a waiting thing? Why is it not just written into the code and it just follows it?
Because what happens if, say you want to jump, what happens if you've got like 3 or 4 different areas in your code where you need to wait for the Larry to do something? You have to write that bit of code 4 times. Or you just jump, and if you do JAL, you'll jump and store the next number. Then you can keep reusing that same bit of code, and then it can always jump back. So it saves you space.
So it's just more efficient, like.
Yes, correct. We'll
Okay.
jump onto Venus afterwards and I'll show you. But yeah, so that's all that RA is. You can, if you want to, use it as a standard register. So you could just load into RA from the sensor the temperature, and you can absolutely use it like that. But whenever you're using AL, by default, well, that is programmed to just use RA.
So if you use AL, it will start in RA and you can refer to RA to get back to that line. But then if you use AL again later down your code, you've overwritten it.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
That's
fine.
So at the top, obviously, a couple of examples there. So the top one is where you're aliasing the outside temp to R15. So by using that code, you can basically say load into outside temp from the sensor the temperature. And that way you don't even have to use R0 if you don't want to. You could just use outside temperature and then you could keep it like that. And you've
Wait, what? See it? What?
so when we do coding, for example, say you wanted to load the temperature from a sensor, you would put L for load
Mm-hmm.
into RA from the sensor, the temperature. Yeah? Let's say you want to use that temperature throughout your code. There's a risk that you might use R0 again and override the data.
Yeah.
So what you can do is you could alias a register to just be for that. Obviously, it's only a name and you could put anything into it,
Oh,
but
I didn't know you could do that. I've only ever alias to the pins.
yes, correct, you have. But yeah, you can alias
Mm.
the registers. The reason I've done R15 is because you'll very, very rarely use all of the register to 15. As you get more efficient, you'll just reuse your registers. But R15, you'll never.
So what's the benefit of doing that?
It's just for ease of reading. Because if you look through your code and you see R0, 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 you have to go through the code to figure out what it is you're trying to do. But if
So
so,
do
go on.
you? I don't understand. Why would you alias the sensor to R15 and not just to
1 second.
the pin? I don't get it.
No. So don't forget that these
Really?
registers, so the R's are your internal registers. They're not the devices.
So can you, if you're looking at a sensor, can you just alias the temperature or just
Uh,
the
so
item you're looking at?
when you're aliasing, you're not doing anything with the device.
Then what's the point? Don't get it.
It's just for ease. So let me show you.
Why not just alias to a pin like you normally do?
So on the hang on, let me quickly write something. So the pin you get don't worry about the pins at the moment. So let me do this. Okay, so then we can. Right, I'll leave it like that because otherwise I'll be here all day trying to think the best kind of way of doing it. So if you go
Can
into
I go
there
into that?
and scroll down, yeah, scroll down to line 100. So obviously ignore
Mm.
the red text because I've not really aliased anything properly in the code. This wasn't for this. So the top
Okay.
one, lines 100 to 102, is if you didn't alias the register. So you're going to load into R0 from the sensor the temperature.
Mhm.
You're then going to check if it's greater than 120. So you'll override R0 with that. And then you can just save to event the on based on that, right? And that
Which
makes
is how I
sense.
would normally do it.
Yeah. So all I'm trying to explain to here is that you can alias a register. So where we've got R0 there, we could have that as external temperature. So then, just for ease of reading, without even looking at any of the code, you know, oh, I've got the external temperature in that register. And you're not gonna write another bit of code like load into R15 because you're not going to use them. You always use R0, R1 to around R4. You don't really go any higher than that unless it's really complex. So all I'm trying to explain to you is that you don't have to use the registers at R0 to R15. You can give them names.
Oh, I get you now.
Does that make sense?
So instead of just seeing R15 and not knowing what R15 refers to,
Mm-hmm.
you can alias them so you know exactly what they are.
Yeah. Obviously, it only works if you're not going to override it because there's no point in having external temperature, but then you put in the open state of a door into it. It's pointless.
Yeah, I think I'd find that quite helpful because what confuses me is when if I was loading everything into a different register, it makes sense. It's when you start reusing registers, I get a bit lost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for anything where you may reuse external temperature, if it's going to become like a main concept of your code, put it into R15, alias it, and you know you've always got it
So you
available.
still have to do your set greater than, don't you? And turn an
Yeah,
event on
depending on
and
what you want
stuff.
to do with it, you still do that, yeah.
So line 106 is just another way of writing line 100.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
but because we gave it the name, it just becomes a little bit friendlier to the eye. That's all. That's all I'm trying to explain, that you can alias, so as you normally alias the devices, you can also alias the internal registers.
But it's gonna have to be one you use often, isn't it? Not one that's just
Yeah, yeah, I mean, or you
it'd be
just alias
pointless otherwise.
everything, and if you find it easy to do that, then you do that. It's whatever's best for you. Um, So, obviously, we've not
Are we
really.
Still looking at alias. I've got another question, but I don't want to jump ahead.
Jump ahead, or you want any questions that is sparking is fine.
I struggle. Well, I don't really understand the difference between aliasing something and defining it.
Alias is
If you talk about define later, I'll wait.
I can't remember if I talk about define later. Kind of, but not in like the very basic way. So basically, aliasing is you just giving a name to something that already exists. So aliasing is optional. So your pins always exist even if you don't alias. All you're doing is giving
So
that pin a name.
if you don't alias the pin, you have to constantly write D0 or D1.
D0, D1, R0, R1. Yeah, that's all
So you
aliasing is doing.
only alienist is basically just I don't know how you say the word. It's just basically naming it in it.
Yeah, that's it. That's literally all alias. You're giving it an alias.
Oh.
That's all aliasing does. Defining, you're basically you're bringing something into the code. You're creating something.
Because
So
define is when you get the number from
from the
the Stationpedia.
Stationpedia, yeah. So what you do is you're basically just naming it again, but you're making it available to your code as well.
Yeah, that I don't understand. I don't understand what you mean.
So define you normally. So let me think.
I know that you can you can define and put like the number of a solar panel. But then if you've got more than one solar panel, you don't have to pin each solar
Yeah.
panel.
So normally you use defining for batch reading and writing. But define, I think, can also be used for storing like functions, I think. So I've not done this, but let me just quickly try this. No. Okay, maybe you can't do that. Define
And you just keep
number.
it basic. So if you don't know, just don't tell me it.
Okay, so in the code,
Because that's when you start confusing me.
in the code, just look at line 85. All I've put in there is define number and then just a random number. Yeah, that's all you're doing with defining. You're bringing something into the code for you to use. So I think
then in the code, do I refer to that as number?
yeah. So if you wanted to reuse it, use that as number. It's not something that already existed in the code. I've defined it as something available. So I think you could do define pi as 3.141 whatever the rest of the numbers are, and then you could just say, oh, do whatever this is times pi. That's all you're doing. Sorry, go on.
So that's a similar thing to aliasing, then, isn't it? It's just giving something an easier name.
Yes, but the difference between alias and defining is that aliasing is for things that are already accessible. All you're doing is making your life easier. Defining, you're bringing something in.
Why would you not just bring that? Why would it not always be available?
What, that number that I've just typed in there?
No, I'm thinking more of like when we aliased solar panels. Why could you not just put the solar panels on a pin and then just alias it?
Because you only have so many pins. So to be able to access, it's kind of a combination. If you define something, you're bringing it into the code without the use of a pin because you don't need to. You've defined it. But at the same time, it is also naming it as well to make it easier for you. So I think.
So can you not define? So say you've got like 4 solar panels plugged in. You only wanted one solar panel to do something. You couldn't define it. You'd have to. You'd have to put that particular solar panel on the pin.
You don't have. If you wanted to only control a single solar panel, you could batch read to it.
How? If you're using the number of the solar panel, surely it's just gonna do it to all the solar panels.
But that's when you'd have to do the batch name. I think I've shown you that before, where like, oh, you label something and then you do SB and then you put hash in brackets.
Yeah.
But we're getting way ahead of where we are now, love.
I just don't get what the difference is.
Define just after
it brings something in that's not already available, but
That
I don't understand why.
you might be overthinking it. After the tutorial, so look up constants, and defining is basically a constant. You create something that you can later refer to. It's basically a way of just like, I don't know, creating a I'm struggling to explain it because it's.
Too simple to explain any further.
I think so. um,
Okay. I will just take it as it
define is just
brings something
about.
else in that isn't already available.
Yeah, so aliasing is you are aliasing a register. So
Just making it easier for yourself because you're renaming it.
yeah, ignore what the name is. It's what you're doing to the register of the device. So you are aliasing R0 to become something else, to be named something else. Defining is basically aliasing, but something that's not available already in the code. R0 and D0 are already available in there, whereas a hash isn't. So I need to bring that into the
Okay.
code so I can use it later.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
And then that's it. Don't look into it anymore. That's what it is.
Okay. Sorry.
No, that's fine. So here I'm just going to go like it's basically pretty standard stuff. So obviously you've got your basic mathematical stuff. So you've got add, sub for subtraction, you've got mul for multiply, and you've got div for divide. And the registers are basically just numbers, is all you're holding into them. So you can add R0 when you write the add function. So add is the function. The next part of the function is where you're going to put the result. And most functions work this way whenever you are bringing something in. So if you're loading into R0 something, so the result is normally the second part of the function.
Yeah, I get this. I find that a bit confusing. I can find it confusing when so say you're adding 2 to what's already in R0.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be add R0, R0, 2.
Correct, yeah, because you put in the result of whatever
Yeah, I
your
find that a
function
bit
is.
confusing.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, whenever you're in your code, if you're ever unsure, click on your little function button, click add, and it does explain to you. And
I don't find that explanation very helpful, if I'm honest.
where it says register equals A plus B.
Yeah, some of them aren't as particularly helpful.
No, some of them you need to have a bit of a think about it. But like, if you search for add, I think that makes sense.
So basically, so even if you do not add and like subtract, sub in it for subtract,
Mm-hmm.
it's whatever you're doing. So the add or subtraction, the first register is the one that's going to save the result of the next two things.
Yeah, correct.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
Okay.
So
Load
obviously that's
R0, D0 temperature.
yeah. So the top bit I was just saying, like you can just interact with them in your code. You can also connect to your external devices, so you can load into R0 from D0 the temperature.
But
So
that's not very proper, is it? Because technically, if you've aliased D0, you should just be calling that whatever you
yeah,
called it.
exactly. If you'd aliased R0 and aliased D0, you'd use the names.
Yeah.
But just for example, obviously we haven't aliased anything on that writing, so that's why I haven't put anything there.
There's an L, load,
Uh-huh.
R0,
Yeah.
D0 temperature.
So you've got load and you've got set.
So that's taking the temperature of whatever device is at pin 0 and loading that into register 0.
Perfect. Bang on.
Okay.
And then I've just kind of put there as well, like obviously not all devices will have a temperature setting, but check the Stationpedia for what options are available on the devices. And
Is
almost every device that has a logic port will have different logic options.
is there a quiz at the end of this?
No?
Oh, it's okay then.
I'm not clever enough to do a quiz, are you joking?
So the next one's save.
Well, so I think it's exactly said it's called set, but I always remember it as save as well. Load and save, to me it makes more sense. But yeah, same kind of thing. Save to the device, the on, and then whatever's in R0. Obviously, whenever you're saving, whatever you're saving to it is at the end of the code.
Yeah, I get a bit confused by this one because this is like the opposite of the
So
load.
it's
No, it's like the add.
yeah. So
It's
look
the
at it
opposite, isn't it?
as yeah. So basically, the first part of the code is what you're doing. The second is what you're doing it to, which applies to both the load and the save. because I'm loading into R0, so I'm doing it to R0. I'm saving to D0, I'm doing it to D0. Make sense?
Yeah.
You sure?
Yeah, I have to think about it a
I
bit
think it takes some
when I'm
getting
writing
used
it.
to. Once you've done it enough, it kind of flows a little bit. Um, but
So
yeah.
that's saying save onto device 0,
Mhm.
the on setting,
Mhm.
whatever is in R0.
So it's the on property because don't. I know you're only using a word that's fine, but there is obviously like a setting as an option in there as well. You could do on or setting, so it's the on property. I
Sorry.
I know
Okay.
I know that's really like dickish of me, but there you go.
I'm not even going to remember that, so don't expect me to refer to it
No,
like that all the
it's
time.
fine just as long as you understand that obviously our setting in its own is also a logic function, logic option.
Wow, what did I say that's made you say that? I don't get it.
You said the on setting.
Well, yeah, it is the on setting.
Yeah, yeah.
There's an on setting and there's a setting setting.
I'm being a dick. Just ignore
Oh,
me.
fuck
It's
off
fine.
then.
And then the next bit is where you don't even have to interact with a device at all. You can literally just set an R0 to something. So you use move, which is a function, and that will literally just set R0 to 10.
You have to put move.
Yeah, so
It's
move.
not physically moving.
It's not, no, no. So you are moving, so you're changing the value of R0 to whatever
And
you
you'd
give
think
it.
it'd be changed, wouldn't you?
Well, I'm sure whoever wrote the code, I'm sure they had reasons for it. Um, but yeah, if you ever want to just do that, so for example, a reason you might use this is at the top of your code, you might want to initialize something. So, again, I'll go back to my Larry. You have so many stops, and if you want to reuse the code on different saves, you might have a different amount of stops. And when you get to the end one, you have to handle it differently. So in the code at the top, you would set a register to the maximum amount of stops, and you just change that every time you want to use the code somewhere else.
Why is it like set rather than move?
Well, you're already using S. You're already using set, and it's probably just a bit more confusing. Um, But yeah, basically, I didn't write the code. I'm the middleman. I'll just work here. If you want to
So is
set,
that all move is used for?
yeah, that's what move does. It just
Sets
moves
the
a register.
register,
Yeah,
but
move a
without
register
having
to
to
a new.
do anything to it. You're just
Yes,
setting it to be what it is.
yeah. So I could write move R010 and then directly under it go move R020. So what it will do is okay, set R0 to 20 10, and then okay, now change it to 20. That's all it's going to do. So if that's ever useful in your code, that's how you do it. So,
Did you
what?
know if you don't set anything in a register, you don't
Mm-hmm.
give it a number, is it automatically just 0?
Uh, I think technically it's non-existent.
Okay.
I don't think it's 0. I think it's
So you couldn't just
nothing.
do R0 plus 10 if R0 has not got something in already.
No, if you want to do that, you do add.
Yeah, but if R0 doesn't have anything automatically and you add in 10, does it just become 10?
If R0 has not been used, because this isn't adding anything, this is just moving it.
Yeah, I'm on about adding.
So R0, so when you put R0 into the add and it's not being used anywhere else, the add function will take it as non-existent, so a 0. But
Okay, so
then,
the answer would just be 10.
yeah. Whereas in other
Okay,
parts of your function, if you've not used it, it might be like a 1 or a 0 for true or false.
okay, I get it. Are we on the wall still or are we
Um,
down here?
I can't remember. So yeah, I can't remember what I'm doing. I don't know. This is all an absolute mess.
Let's see how seven separate data and powerful.
So we'll go on to loops if you want to, and then we'll come back to the door. Or she's going to go into the door now, I think.
What?
No, we're going to talk about loops. So loops you have done before. So this is where basically you jump back to the start. So normally there's very few bits of code that you're going to do that don't have a loop because obviously you want your code to be constantly doing something. If it's like a one-time write, you wouldn't use a loop, but most of the time you will. So long story short, whenever you are writing a loop, you know this before, so you give the code a name. So like somewhere in it you'll put start and then you'll put a colon. And inside your code it'll go purple. That's how you know it's the start of a loop. Yeah. So come to the computer.
But I've never named the loops. I've just put start.
Yeah, that's you naming the loop. So come over here, and I'll show you. I've got some examples set up. If you click on edit and go to the top, so you'll see that we've got a start. That is the start of the loop.
So that doesn't have to be start.
No, you can write anything in there.
Oh, you.
That's just
I've
what
just always assumed you have to start it.
No, so you don't. So you
You
would
never told me that.
say you've got 4 different loops in your code. You might have a start. You might have a save temperature. You might have an increment device. It could be anything. In my Larry one, I've got a bit that says idle, and it's the bit where it's waiting for it to be idle. So whenever you put a colon, it's just you're initializing a loop, or you at least a part in your code that you can jump back to, which you can just use the J function, and you can just go back to it.
But then how do you get out the loop?
So obviously you would then put
Or am I
other
jumping ahead?
checks in there. So like, oh, if something is equal to something, jump to something else. Otherwise, if that check doesn't equate to true, it'll carry on, and then when it gets to the bottom, it'll jump back to start.
Okay.
So as an example, if I turn on this IC, you'll see over here that the light goes on, and it goes off. It goes on, it goes off, and
is that what you've done with this?
that's what that loop's doing. So all it's doing is it yields for half a second. Well, a tick is about half a second. It saves to so I haven't done any aliasing here.
I know. Why have you called it D0?
Just to kind of give you
That's not best practice, is it?
No, but I'm just kind of showing you raw.
So what's sleep? Does that just mean it's...
So the sleep function will wait whatever. So for example, sleep 3 means get to this point and wait for 3 seconds. So
what's the difference between yield and sleep?
So sleep.
Why do you use yield and not sleep?
So yield is ticks, sleep is seconds, and then yield is always just half a tick, which is around half a second. So if you want,
why do you always start with that? For what reason?
Because so the game will try and run the code. So the game will run the code at whatever speed it does. And I don't know if it will try and run the entire code in a half a tick. I don't know if it's that quick. There might be a case of sometimes where it starts running the code. When it's ended, it starts running it straight away again. So it's almost just like a constantly there. It doesn't have a second to finish and start again.
Okay.
So it's good. It's just good practice at the start of your loop to put yield. You don't have to, but you might just get some weird results.
I can't believe you've never told me. I just assumed you had to say the word start at the start. You're such a tit.
Well, I was waiting for the tutorial, obviously, my darling. So obviously, as we've discussed, when you get to the end of your code, you jump back to the start, and that's basically what forms your loop. If you didn't put the J start, your code would run, get to the end, and do nothing.
What should that say? It's possible your code will run too fast, which... What sounds like, mate?
Might want to get labeler out, because I don't know what that's supposed to say. It literally just says, it's possible your code will run too fast, which that's the end of that sentence. But basically, it's just not optimal. Like, if you put the yield at the start, you're giving your code half a second to finish before it starts again. That's all. It's just good practice. Put yield after the start of your loop, and you should be fine. And I've just said there, obviously, I've not aliased it. But like, if you were looking at that code for nothing, you've got no idea what D0 is. Now, we're only doing the on-off here, so it really doesn't matter. But if you were doing some really complex code, obviously that wouldn't help you, because you wouldn't know really what D0 was. But yeah, so obviously when you are creating your loop, you'll know it's working because the writing will go purple. And you'll know when your jump's working because it will go jump, and then whatever it's jumping to in purple as well.
So you've said that obviously it can jump to a line number, but you won't really want that, would you?
So if it's a very basic code, you can do that if you want to, just for ease.
But like it says, if you change it...
If you then add a new line, then yeah. So it's just an option that's there. But you don't have to do that.
How else would you get to... How else would you jump to a line?
So
using AL and RA.
So, well, that will. So whenever you use AL, that will only ever store. So if you come back to the computer for a second. So if I go, let's say I went start here, do something here, and then we're gonna jump AL to line 14. No, let's go 15. Do something. Jump to RA, lowercase, and then land here. So if you have a look at that.
I can't go into that code whilst you're writing it, can I? Or
No,
whilst you're in
but
it.
if you go into it now, so from line 9,
Mhm.
so say your code starts there, do something, and then JAL 15. That's going to jump to line 15 and store line 12 into RA. You go down to 15, do whatever you
It's
want
gonna
to do.
go. It will start at 9, 10, 11, 15, 16, 12.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's basically all the jumping on that is. So that's one way of jumping around. But if you wanted to jump to a specific line, that is where you'd put the colon. Because you want to go, because you can define your lines by the text. So you know how we always do jump start.
Mm.
Well, not in theory. I can move that code if I want to, all the way down to line 17, and it will still work exactly the same because the start is wherever the word start is. So it's better practice to do that than it is to jump to a specific line number.
Okay.
Now there is some branch relative, or jump relative, I should say, not branch. So, for example, I can do.
So do you know where you've got start and then a colon? That's the start of your loop.
Yeah,
It's not actually going to loop unless you jump back to it, though, is it?
that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we do start, so if you go into the code and look at line 34, so you'll see that we've got the start and then we've got a JR2. So
Jump relative to.
JR means jump relative. So wherever we've put that function, so JR is on line 35, it's going to relatively jump 2, so it's going to skip 36, and it's going to go to line 37.
So it's going to land on the second one from it.
From it, yeah. The same works that you can also do minus number, so you can jump relative minus 2.
Then that'll go up.
You can go backwards.
Okay.
That's kind of how you can kind of work through your code and kind of go from there. So here, obviously, I spoke about that the IC housings have a separate data and power port. So all I'm trying to say here is, so for example, I've got power on this red line. Yeah? And I've also got network for the door. But on this side, I've separated my power. So I cannot control this light from the housing. Because even though it's powered through the top, the transformer is creating a second network. And the data port for the IC is on the bottom. So this light is on a different network.
You've put here the networks do not need to be the same.
Yeah, I'm just trying to explain to you that. So it might be that you power your IC, but then on this side, you do something else.
So this will never be able to interact with anything that's connected this side of it.
No.
Only this side of it.
What it can do is obviously anything connected to this red line. So if I wanted to control the power to this, what I could actually do is I could control the whatchamacallit.
Yep, I know what that is.
Yeah, you know what that is.
Yep.
The transformer. So if I left that light on, that transformer, if I wanted to, I could write onto the code to turn the transformer off because the transformer is on the red network.
I know, but what are the odds of that, though, that you're ever going to have a transformer that controls one thing?
No, you wouldn't. But like, for example, you might have a code that connects to a transformer that powers an entire room. Or all of your printers. But all I'm trying to...
So is there no way other than interacting with the transformer instead of the light that this could control this?
it needs to
How
be
would you get it on the same network?
Well, you would not. So there's no reason for this. So what you could do, for example, is remove the transformer if I had a battery in my drill, or all my batteries are dead. But basically, if this light was on this line, it would work. I could code to it.
Yeah, but what if your transformer is so say for example your transformer is split in your rooms.
Mhm.
You've got a different transformer for each room,
Yep.
but your hearting is in the room before it splits.
So the one option is you could put a housing on both networks. So you could put housing on the output of the transformer, and then that would operate the light. Or you can use something called mirrors, which I think we used on Mars. Don't know if you
I don't know what
remember.
they are.
So a logic mirror, obviously it depends on the device you're connecting it to, but it's one of these. Okay? So if I get,
Oh,
can you remember?
it just tells you what it is, doesn't it? Didn't we use this for like temperature or something?
We used it for, I can't really remember.
Sure, it was outside temperature.
So if I just connect this up like this, so obviously these are still, this is still two separate networks. Ignore the color of the cable, doesn't matter.
So this yellow cable.
Well, what was yellow is now
Oh.
part red, but ignore the colors.
Mhm.
You know what, actually, let me just do this just so I don't want to come across as patronizing, but just to make it clear. So this is a separate network to the cable on that side.
Just FYI, saying you don't want to come across as patronising doesn't make it any less patronising.
Well, what are you going to do?
Just FYI.
But what I can do is I can set that so that the light is called flasher. So I can turn that on, and that mirror is now mirroring the flasher. So what this would allow me to do is I could read from this if that light is on or off. Now I can't write into this, but I can read from that, and this is jumping networks.
So how does that help you if you can only read it?
Well, obviously, you'd have to.
You still couldn't use this to control it.
You can't use that to control it, but we could take the status of the light, and if it's on, do something if we wanted to. Use,
What
but
in
you'd connect
on
to the
this
mirror.
network, you'd have to have that on this side.
No, so with how this currently is, so the ice is getting power from the yellow line, and the logic's on the red line.
Oh, so you can read it and you can say it's on, so you can do something, but you can't control that.
Not in this current setup. That's correct. If I
Yeah,
wanted to
yeah,
do
yeah.
something with that, you either use some of like the logic readers and stuff, or you just put another IC on this side. Obviously,
Okay,
this
cool.
setup is a test. Technically, there's no reason for this to be two separate networks. I'm just trying to make it clear that obviously, when you put a transformer in between, you're splitting the network, and the IC can be powered from one network and control devices on the other.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
And then let's just go on to the door code.
Why have you got a laptop and a computer?
I can't remember.
Is there any? So obviously the laptop you can move around.
Mhm.
Is there any reason you'd have a computer set up and not a laptop?
Um, there's no real. I mean, the laptop costs a little bit more, to print. But the computer, I, I think a lot of people will probably use laptops because there's a chance of you accidentally overriding the code. So obviously up here, what I'm
What
doing,
do you mean?
so up here on the computer, I'm picking all the different devices. So we've got like IC housing door, IC housing loop, batch housing, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, so don't you have that on the laptop?
No,
Oh no, it's the laptop only can
it,
the thing is to the chip that's in it.
correct, yeah. So
Oh,
I
yeah,
prefer
that's too
use I
dangerous.
prefer using the laptop because it's very easy to override your code.
So when we were set up on Mars before you blew it up,
We blew it up, but go
we
on.
had a computer set up for the centrifuge. Was there any reason we didn't just do it on a laptop?
We did not have a computer on the centrifuge. We had a computer on the sorter
Right. Well, was there any reason?
because you can't use a sorter motherboard in a laptop
Okay, I
because
didn't know that.
the motherboard needs to be connected to a device that's on the same network as the device you're configuring.
So,
Whereas the laptop's wireless. Well, to a degree. I'm sure it's got Wi-Fi on there
so what are the motherboards then?
somewhere. Well, just have a look. So go into Stationpedia and search for
Because
motherboard.
you obviously don't put a motherboard in your laptop.
You do.
No, we haven't.
Yes, you do. Pick it up and click on it.
Oh, why have you never told me these fucking things?
This is why we're doing the tutorial, to show you these little things.
So what motherboards do you put in?
So, hang on, I'm just showing people. I mean, I think everyone will be aware, but if you're not, obviously you click on the laptop, you've got the chip, so that's the circuit you put into this slot, your battery to power the laptop, and the motherboard is whatever you're doing. Fun fact, the battery in your laptop does not drain. So even though you have to put a battery in it, it never runs out.
I didn't even know you had to put a battery in it. Fuck me.
Well, it's probably a bug. They'll probably fix it at some point. But never waste a large battery on your laptop. It's not needed. Just use a small one and you'll be good forever. See? Learning things.
Fucking facts, aren't you?
I am.
So what motherboard do we usually use then?
So for the IC, so if you search for motherboard, there is an IC editor motherboard.
Why did you never make the retro computer?
No reason. No reason. So the IC editor motherboard is obviously for IC. You've got communications, which is for the trader. Logic, which I've never really used. So I don't really know what that's used for.
If we use a sorter motherboard.
We do. So you know how you want to set up a whitelist on the sorters?
Yeah.
That's the motherboard you need to use. Yeah.
Oh, you never explained these properly to me then.
Again, tutorial, dear.
Shut
okay,
up,
so we're going to have a practical test now.
You said there weren't no quizzes.
This isn't a quiz, it's a test.
Same thing.
So I'm going to turn on this circuit.
What circuit?
This circuit here. Now, if you open the door and look at the housing on the floor, you'll see that the state is number 1. Close the door, and that's going to 0. So that is where, in the code, if you have a look, that is where we're saving to the dB, the setting. That's what we
I thought this was doing the light. Oh,
no,
we changed it.
I've got multiple codes, yeah. So this is now
See,
the door.
Yeah, I won't like that. Go on.
No. So at the moment, all we're doing is, if the door's open, we're saving it to the housing. If we're closing it, and it's just a very quick example of like saving and loading. So based on what we've learned,
actually aliased the door this time. Hold on.
I have done it. Yep, I've done it the way that you would normally do it. I haven't aliased R0, but it doesn't matter. So I want you to do something. I want you to have a go. And you can do this.
Oh god, don't shout at me.
When that door's open, I want you to turn this light on.
What light?
This light.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
So, you already know a property that we can use.
On?
Well, if you have a look, so we already know that when the door's open, it's a 1 on the housing. So what am I saving to the dB?
What do you mean?
So obviously, in the code,
Can't get rid of that.
Get rid of what?
Can't get rid of the drop down. Oh, there.
In the code.
So your code is saying you load in into R0 whether the door is open or not. Yeah. So it's going to be 1 for open, 0 for closed.
Perfect.
Then you're saving to the dB. Why to the dB? Oh, just because you want to be able to read it.
I'm just trying to show you. Yeah.
The setting. So that the setting on the dB is just what you can look at it and see it.
Yeah, that's all it is. And then if you wanted to, on other housings, you could also, well, on this one, you can also load from that setting and do things with that number if you want to. Excuse me. So, I want you to turn that light on when the door's open.
I'm already loading into the R0 whether the door's open or not. So I can reuse R0. So let me alias the light first. Make life easier.
Yep.
What you called it?
So when you're aliasing, it doesn't matter. That's just for you. So you call it whatever you want to call it.
Oh, fuck. How do I open my bag? Oh,
Uh,
twat, dumbass.
how long has it been since your PlayStation
I
is?
know.
Now,
Oh, hold on.
no. So one thing I'm gonna say to you is, and to anyone else who's not sure of this, whenever you are changing the pins on a housing, turn the device off.
Yeah, because I'm
Because
sure you do that all the time.
I try and remember, if your code is running and you change the pin, the code will continue running, and you risk changing other devices on your network.
Yeah. Right, okay. Right, bear with me because you rushed me.
I'm not rushing. We are waiting. We are all waiting for you, my dear.
And that feels like pressure. Right, so I've loaded into R0, whether it's 1 or not.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm basically want to say if it's 1, turn the light on.
Yeah.
So,
So, you, first things first, you want to see what can you write to the light. What logic options do you have?
well, what's the light called that you've used?
So, if you search for light in your Stationpedia,
Yeah, which one is it? It's just flashing light.
I'm just searching for Stationpedia. 1 second. So it's just flashing light. Yeah.
So I can read and write to the on. So I just need to say on.
And if you click on in your Stationpedia, it will tell you what the 0 and the 1 do.
You don't use ifs in these, do you?
You can't do ifs. So if you
It's
anything
like
like that, you
set.
branch greater than, branch less than, set
So
equal to.
what's the difference between branching greater than or setting less?
So branch greater than is if something is greater than something, go somewhere else. Set greater than is you're just changing the register to the result of if it is greater than or something. So branch is
So
if you want to
here,
go somewhere else in the code. So here, you don't want to go anywhere else in the code. You're
so
just
I'm
going to do
setting it,
set.
but do I set whether it's greater than 0?
So why do you need to do if it's greater than 0?
Because I need it to know if it's 1.
Okay, but you already know that you've got a 1 or 0 based on the door.
What do you mean?
Turn your housing on.
Wasn't it?
Yeah, so at the moment it's 0. Open your door. Now it's 1. So
Yeah, but how else do I say if it's 1, do this?
well, you don't have to do if, do you? So how do you save to a device? Because all we need to do is we need to tell that light it's on property. Basically, it's on property needs to be between 1 or
Oh, so
0.
basically, I'm just saving to the light R0.
Mm-hmm.
And if R0 becomes 1, it'll just turn on.
Yeah. But
Oh,
no,
you dickhead.
if
You
it
could have just
becomes
said
1.
that.
No, the whole point is trying to like show you. And what is very clear is that my teaching is shit.
Why?
Because you didn't get it. And I thought we'd gone through this just now.
You're doing that thing again and it's going to make me kick off.
I'm sorry. I'll go and sit in a corner somewhere.
So I'm just saying save to the light, the on setting, R0.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that.
Yeah. So try it. So you need to export your code. Make sure you've got the correct IC housing selected on the computer.
Oh shit, don't take that out on this one, do I? Well, is it just batch housing?
No, it's an IC housing door. And then you export the code. And then turn it on and see if it's working. That's it.
You need to stop saying, right, just friendly advice.
Okay.
When I'm trying to get my head around something, you need to not say like, oh, well, my teaching's obviously shit because I thought I'd just explain this. Because that's not
Well,
how life works.
I think
Just
I'm
because you've explained something, you have to physically do it to understand it.
well, I think I'm making you a better person by doing that, but
No,
maybe
you're
not.
being fucking patronising.
I warned you about that before. So,
Yes, don't make it any easier to hear.
um, but here, so this was a very simple case. So the door being open is already what we wanted. So you didn't have to do anything to the 1 or 0. You could just write that direct to the light, and that works.
Because in my mind, I was thinking that I have to tell the light if it's less than this, do this.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you don't because the 1 and the 0 turns on and off anyway.
Yeah, if you were dealing with something else, so let's say, for example, you wanted the light to come on if the temperature was above 20 degrees, then you would do a set greater than, or a set less
Yeah,
than.
but there's just no need because it's 1 and 0 anyway.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Okay.
Your simpleton wife does get it eventually.
You do. So I want you to do something else here now. So when we hit this lever, we've got a
But let
pink.
me read your signs first.
Okay.
You can use the same register to save to multiple devices.
Yeah, you alright with that?
Take your word for it.
You've just done it. You've literally just done it.
Oh, as in you can use ours. Oh, okay, yeah. Why is it two computers?
We've got a pink job and a blue job.
Let's write a code to read from the lever. When the lever is pulled, the light should come on and the speaker should alarm.
Yeah.
What light? What speaker? Oh, that light.
And that speaker.
Fuck you.
So
Look at the lever. It will show you what logic you're changing and what values are output. Remember, -0
no,
equals
ignore the minus. Ignore
false.
the minus. Ignore the minus. That's a dash. Just remember, 0 is false or off. 1 is true or on. So all
So
you
when
need.
we pull the lever, you want the light to come on
Yep.
and the what's it called?
Speaker.
Is that not just the same as what we've done?
Yeah, but this time you're writing it from scratch because there's
Oh,
nothing
I
on
can
that
do this.
computer.
Which one am I doing it on?
With the pink job, my darling.
Why is there a pink and a blue?
Because I'm going to write the code on this one, and then we'll just see what difference we do.
No, just talk me through it.
No, based on what we've just gone through.
Right, I've got 3 aliases. Whoops. So can we use... Would you use the DB for anything on this one?
If you want to, you don't have to.
No,
You
I
don't
don't
need the
want
DB
to.
for this.
It confuses me. Oops. Nope. Shut up. A minute. So what have we got?
So you've got a
Oh, I can't
lever, a
type.
light, and a speaker.
A lever, a light, and a speaker. 0. Bear in mind, this is going to take me a lot longer than you, so don't
That's
take the
fine.
piss.
That's fine. But I'm just going to see how, because if you get it working, fine. But we might do it a different way.
What your wave's doing the right way.
No, there are multiple
What you normally
ways.
tell me.
No, no, that's a marriage conversation. That is not to be said on YouTube.
What's the lever called? Is it just lever?
Yes, but you don't need to worry about the name of it. So the devices you're connecting doesn't matter the name of them.
I'm looking at the different logics you can read and write from.
Oh, I see what you mean. Sorry.
So fuck off.
Sorry. Well
So
done.
it would be open, wouldn't it? I'm reading the open of the lever.
Yes.
Just because I've not used levers before.
I mean,
so.
setting might also do the job, but yeah, open will work. Some devices, they'll have multiple properties, which you can use any of them because they'll both be changing state.
So when the lever's up, you want it on, both of them on.
Mm-hmm.
One moment. So if I'm reading this right, whoa, they all need to say 1.
Yep.
Will the speaker just be on, or will it be sound alert? What does it sound alert when it's on?
What do you mean, sorry?
Well, I've looked at the speaker.
Mm-hmm.
There's an on setting.
Yep.
And then there's a sound alert setting.
So the sound alert, if you click on it, it'll give you all the different sound alerts. So that's if you wanted to change the alarm.
Oh, so it's not just on or off.
So on or off's fine. You don't want to change the sound alert.
So if a speaker's on, it means it's just constantly making noise.
Mm-hmm. The speakers are a bit finicky. It might be that you have to like trigger it a few times, but for this you should be able to just do it and it should be fine. It should work. Got to be very careful with the speaker because I used it on Venus and got a copyright warning from YouTube.
there any... I'll ask you after.
Okay.
I assume it's just that, but I think it's a bit... I've done something wrong. You're going to pick up something. Oh, have I done that wrong?
So why don't you? So let's export your code.
Is it wrong or right?
Well, I think it's right. But export it.
Well, am I?
I'll show you mine in a second. Get off my computer. So
Export.
yeah, export to the housing, and then you need to set your pins up. I can read out what you've done if you want. So you've got your lever on D0, your lights on D1, and your speaker on D2. Well done. Close it. Done. Easy peasy. So the
Is
only...
that right?
Well, it's working, isn't it?
I feel like you're going to tell me I've done something wrong.
No, you've done perfectly fine. That's exactly what I did. The only difference that I did on mine was I wanted to show you how you can alias your registers. So you can see that I did the alias lever state to R15, and then I'm referring to that in my code instead of R0 or R15.
Is that not confuse you?
In this particular example, it's unnecessary because it's such an easy code. But when you've got shed loads of code and shed loads of registers, it will help you. But we both did exactly the same, and if I export mine...
Did you know, like, we're saving the same register to 2 different items? Is there not an easy way of just putting that into one, or do you have to have it on separate lines?
No, because they have... Those devices need to have something in common. And you could label them both the same, but they still have different hashes. So you do normally put it on separate lines. But
I mean, there is something with both, really, that best practice we've both done wrong.
And what's that, my darling?
Because really, you should put comments in.
Yes, I guess you can put comments in, and you know how to do that, don't you?
No, but best practice, you should put comments in your code, shouldn't you? And it hashes on this.
Yeah, I've just put a comment in mine. That's fine. But yeah, realistically, comments. Again, this is really small code. It's obvious what it's going to be doing.
It might be obvious now, but if you're doing X, Y, and Z later, you come back. It might take you a minute to figure out what you was doing. Whereas if you just put a code in, you could read the. If you put a note in, you could read the note, know exactly what it was doing.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, as my wife has said, best practice.
Best practice
is to leave a comment in your notes so you know what your code is doing. Yes.
But that just, if you get used to doing it in smaller code, when you come to write your bigger code, you're already used to doing it, aren't you?
No one likes the brand news. Right. So far you've got the very basics of reading and writing the stuff. We're now going to do some batching.
Oh, I know this one.
So
this is what you do to solar panels.
Yep. So I'm going to let you read all the lights.
All the lights?
Sorry, all the signs. Sorry. You let me know whether you can do what you need to do. Now she's going to go up and count the lights because she didn't believe me.
Do I need to read this one as well, or?
Well,
We're going to define a solar panel.
We are not going to define a solar panel, because why would we need to define a solar panel?
Because when we only do it, you define it.
Yeah, but where are you getting a solar panel from?
Oh, the light. Shut up, Dick. You know what I meant. We're going to define the light.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to...
So the reason we're going to define the light is because, obviously...
Because we're bringing it in when it doesn't already know about it. So it's not going to be on the pins, because you can't pin 8, however many lights onto 6 pins.
Correct, Mundo.
We're going to load batch. That thing?
It depends what we're going to do. So over here, so I've got your different commands that you get, different functions. So SB is your set batch or your save batch. So it's the same as your save, but it just means you're going to do it to multiple devices. Load is obviously load, but you're loading from the batch. And then the batch names, if, for example, if I named 6 lights something, 6 lines another one, I can save batch to a device with this particular name.
So when I said earlier, if you've got so many solar panels and you only want to do something with one of them, that's how you do it.
Yes.
Load batch name.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, to a solar panel, you wouldn't load. You'd normally save.
You know what I mean? Shut
You
up.
can load from them, but it doesn't really come up that often. But yeah, I've just left some kind of notes here. Really, it's nothing too fancy. It just kind of basically tells you, obviously, how you do a load batch name, a save batch name if you need to. When it comes to the save batch name, you obviously have to define the name of the device. I've used a wrong choice word there.
What does devive mean?
What does what mean?
Devive.
Devive? Where are you seeing devive?
You need to proofread your signs, mate.
Oh, you dickhead. You know what I mean. God, of all the things to worry about, she worries about my fucking spellings. There we go, fixed it. But yeah, basically, long story short, is by using SB, LB, SBN, or LBN, we can interact with multiple devices of the same type. So where over here, obviously, we read from a single lever and wrote to a single speaker and a single light, we can read to all the lights in here.
Okay.
So to start with, we are going to, there's no code on here, so we're going to write this code from scratch. Hold on a second. Hang on, wait. First thing I want you to do is using this first lever, I want you to turn all the lights in here on and off.
And if I don't want to?
Well, then you failed as a student.
So, am I just writing this on the batch housing?
Yes, it's clear, it's ready for you to go. So, the idea here is you are loading from a single device and you are saving to multiple devices. So, when you're interacting with the lever, you're just going to load. It's a single device. When you're interacting with the lights, you're going to save batch.
How am I going to pin these in? Because you haven't renamed the levers.
Well, that's part of your testing.
Give me a labeler then.
Here you go.
Arsehole.
So nasty.
Did I use 0 or 1? Which lights have you used, Piers?
I'm going to let you have a look. So you've got one directly
No,
above you.
oh, for
No,
fuck's
I'm not always going to be
sake.
here. One day I might be stuck
Yes,
inside
well,
of...
if I was doing it myself, I'd have put the lights up myself. I'd know which ones they were.
Yeah, I haven't renamed them. So what it's called is what it's called.
No, that's besides the point. Light round. I'm guessing that one. Copy that. Oh, fuck, I didn't mean to press that. Never mind. That. Oh. FN button on my computer. My laptop's in such a weird place.
It's a weird size keyboard you've got on your laptop.
So what did I want to do? Oh yeah. Load into R0. Fuck, I can't remember what it's called.
Remember that the device you're loading from doesn't matter the name of the device. Your code doesn't have to be the same name.
No, but I need to know the name of it so I can set it on my pin.
Yes.
If I've renamed it.
Rectamundo.
I assume it's just one.
Oh, she's done something. Boom. Perfect.
That's what you said, yeah?
Yeah, that's perfect. That's perfectly fine. So you're literally loading from a lever, save batching to the lights. So yeah, you define the lights. So the lights don't need a pin. Your lever does need a pin. Jobs are good one. If you wanted to, if you don't want to use any pins, you could load batch from that single lever. It's a waste of time. If you don't need to, don't do it.
What does that mean? What do you mean load batch?
So obviously you're loading just from that, aren't you? So you just got an L into R0 from the lever. If you didn't want to use any pins, you could load batch from that lever. But don't worry about it because we're going to touch on that now.
The load batch, you don't have to use a pin.
No, so like you know where you save batch, you don't have to use a pin. Same with load batch. But we're about to touch on that now anyway. So I'm going to just borrow your code for a second. And I'm going to export that. Right, can you do me a favor? Can you rename lever 1 to batch lever?
I like lever 1.
I want you to rename it to batch lever, please.
And then how am I going to tell the difference?
You're not. And now what I want you to do,
So you want any of these to turn the light on?
I want all of them. All of those levers need to be down for the lights to come back on. And just to complicate it, we're also going to do a save batch name. Because I want you to tell me, without looking, which one of those lights is named different.
Can we just do one thing at a time, please?
Yeah. So the first one we're going to
So
do.
what do you want to do first?
So well, no, this is what I want. This is the code. I want your code to turn all the lights on that are called light round when all of those levers are open. So if one of them's open, won't do anything. I want all three to turn the lights on. So to start with, because you're working with multiple levers, you're going to do a load batch.
So if I do a load batch, do they all have to be the same?
So what, same
Is
name?
that how it does it?
They don't have to be, because for the load batch it'll just do all levers. But if I had like another lever over here doing something else, it would also do that one. So if we had other levers, you'd do load batch name. Now we're not going to worry too much about that. We've only got those 3 levers in here, I think.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, does load batch mean all 3 of these have to be the same state before it does something?
Depends what you do it how you want to do.
I don't know, that's what I'm asking you. I've
So
never used load batch, I don't.
so load batch. So if you in your code. So yeah, we kind of got it here. So basically load batch. So go to your computer and type LB. And then put your cursor over it and it'll tell you what it wants. So the very last part of that is it's asking for a batch mode. Now batch mode is one of these over here that I've put on this sign.
Average, sum, minimum, or maximum.
Correct, yes.
What does that mean?
So, well, you know what the average of something is, yeah?
Yeah.
And you know what the sum is.
Don't be a dick.
No,
Just
I'm
tell
just
me.
saying that it is literally what it is. Because you're loading from more than one device, you're going to have more than one result.
So then how it says minimum. How do you set what you want the minimum to be or the maximum?
Don't worry too much about minimum and maximum now. Basically,
Oh,
let's say for example you weren't loading from levers, you were loading from dials, and you had 2 dials. You've got one dial set to 1, one dial set to 3. If you were to load batch from both of those dials, the maximum, the result would be 3 because it's the biggest. The minimum would be 1 because it's the smallest.
But that don't apply here.
No, that doesn't matter here. So
I'm going to use sum because I want it to be all 3.
yeah, you could also use average if you wanted to. Because
Why have you cleared what I've already written?
I want you to do it again.
So I don't need to alias them, do I?
You do not know. I mean, in theory, if you wanted to, you could. You could alias a pin for each lever, and then you could kind of work with that, but there's no need. It's just
So am I just
overcomplicating it.
jumping straight into the code here then?
So yeah,
Hold
just
on.
start or give it a different name if you want to.
If there's no other levers, I can just use the number.
The what, sorry?
Oh, hold on.
Oh, yes. You can just use the number.
So what's my objective again? Sorry.
So when all levers are open, we want to turn the lights on, but using a save batch name. Because I want you to tell me which light is named different without looking.
So I'm loading into R0. Whether the okay. Then save batch name. I feel like I'm gonna fail this one.
Okay, so first thing first to make.
Wait. Let me
Sorry,
fail first.
sorry. Don't talk to the student. She doesn't like it.
So what is the actual hash that I'm putting in the name?
The what? Sorry.
I need to put a hash in if I'm doing save batch name.
Oh, you at that bit now. Okay, so
What is it?
It's light round with a space, capital L, capital R. I haven't
Because it
renamed them.
has to be exact.
Yes, case sensitive.
What? I would just do that, but I'm sure you're about to tell me something's wrong.
So you are loading the sum of them, which is fine. But how are you checking that all three levers are open?
Well, that's where you said use sum, which I don't understand and you didn't really explain.
So you've got the sum.
I don't know what that means properly.
You know what sum means? Sum
Sum
them
means
up.
add.
Yeah, means add them together. So if I pull this lever, that one becomes a 1. So currently, because these two are closed, we've only got 1. If I do this one, we've got 2. And then this one
So you've
is
got to
3.
tell it what it should sum up to.
That's one way of doing it.
So how do you do that?
So when going back to what you said earlier about ifs, obviously you don't use ifs. How do you check if something is something on this?
I thought when you was explaining it earlier,
Mm-hmm.
sum just meant all of them had to be right.
No,
You didn't make it very clear that sum you have to literally give it a figure.
what? We haven't said sum earlier. What are you on about? We did add earlier.
No, when you was talking about it earlier, and you was like ignore minimum, ignore maximum.
Yeah, ignore minimum, ignore maximum.
You
So,
just kept saying you know what sum means, but then I didn't. How would
no,
I know that
in
I have to
general,
set what sum is?
no. So when you load from multiple devices, so we're going to load from all those levers. If we then put sum at the end, we're telling the code, I want you to sum up the output. If you put average, it would give you the average of the output. So what's going to happen is by using sum, you're going to basically get the sum of these. So if I've got 1, the result you're going to have is 1. Or if I do 2, 2, all 3 of them is going to be 3. So now we need to check that sum and make sure that the result is a number that we want it to be.
Well, that don't work.
So look at your code, you've got an error. Your IC is flashing.
I'm 4. Don't know.
Want me to go and have a look?
No. No way.
Okay.
Wait a minute. So I'm loading. Yeah, you're gonna have to have a look. I don't know.
Okay, so the issue you've got is that you're missing a part of your SBN.
Oh, you twat. Is that better?
You're not airing anymore. You did it, love.
Oh, but I thought. Wait a
What,
minute.
what did you think?
Okay, yeah.
Does it make sense what's happened? So you were basically telling it to do R0, but you weren't telling it what to do.
Uh, yeah. And I should have seen that 'cause it tells you, doesn't it, as you're typing it.
Yeah.
I've just looked at. My bad.
So if you turn all the levers, one of the lights will not turn on because it's named differently to the rest. Now it's find the light.
That one.
Yeah. So if you'll have a look at it, that one's called special light. But that's how a batch name works. All the devices are exactly the same, but one of them is named different, so it doesn't do that one.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the code works absolutely fine. You don't have to change it. The only two things I would do with that: number one, make sure you keep comments in your code, like you told me, and number two, you could have defined the devices so that you weren't just using the numbers in the code. So you could define your lever to that number, and you could
Yeah.
define the lights to the number.
Which would probably be better.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. You've got it working. That's pretty much it. Now I've got another
I don't like it
example.
when you test me.
Sorry. So obviously you used some there, and you could have used some or average. So I've got a couple of codes here that I wrote earlier, just to kind of show
How
you.
would average work if you've got 3 levers? I don't understand that.
So I've got a different example for you. Actually, let's leave all those
Well, I
open
want
so
the
we
light
can
on.
see. Sorry. So I've got a couple of codes here. So over here, look, we've got all these batteries. Leave that for a second. We're not on that yet.
Sorry, sorry.
So we've got all these batteries, yeah? They've
Yep.
all got different charges in them. And over
Right.
here, we've got a display with the number 0.
Well, they aren't have there because some of these are empty.
Yeah, but they're all different levels of charge. Either some of them empty, some of them half full, some of them have got power in.
Okay.
Over here, we've got a display.
Mhm.
Now, if I wanted to see what I've got in those batteries, as a whole, there's multiple ways I could have done it. The first one is this. If you have a look at that one, now I haven't done any defining in there either. I've just done.
Where have you just pulled this code out your ass from?
I had the locker of some that I made earlier. So I put the chip in.
You're so fucking clever. It's annoying.
So you can see what I'm doing in there is I'm loading batch, and that top number is for the battery.
So technically, you should have used your own thingies and actually define them.
Yeah, but I haven't done that specifically to show you the point of doing it. Because looking at this, you wouldn't know what anything is. But yeah, you should define them. But the top one is loading batch from all the batteries. And I'm not doing a batch name, so it's just loading from every single of that battery you can find. The ratio, which is just
So would you just do that?
yeah, that's it. And then export it, and that should still be working. No, because now that's saying 0%, and it was working before.
You said
So
0% before.
it did not. It said 44.
No, when I looked at it when you was talking earlier, it said 0.
It didn't. I've literally just been looking at
Honest
it.
to
It
God,
said
it did.
put the code back.
I
Fucking
don't know
hell.
how.
See, I gave her an example. She touches it, she breaks it.
Oh, hold on. Because my minus button don't work very well.
What do you mean don't work
That'll
very
work.
well? There you go. Got 44, just under 44%.
You know the minus button on your keyboard?
Hmm.
Oh, I have to press it twice for it to work.
Well, how come you never
Yeah.
told me that before now?
Same reason you haven't told me half the shit you've told me in this room before
This is
now.
different. This is learning. But yeah, so all we're doing is we're loading the ratio. The ratio is just a logic option on the batteries, so you'll find that in the Stationpedia. And
What's the ratio it give you?
the ratio, so like a percentage of how much power's in the battery.
So what's the bottom code for? The bottom number.
So the bottom number is the display. So if you want to change that, go ahead and change it to
I'm
the.
fixing it.
It's an LED.
What's display now?
Well, whatever you want to
Don't
call it.
matter, as long as it makes sense.
Whatever you want to call it, my darling. That's it. So yeah, you're basically loading batch from the batteries, and you're basically because you're summing the ratio is a percentage, so it is obviously giving you basically the sum of all those batteries, so it works because 44% plus 44% is 44%.
So you're adding it all together, dividing it by how many you've got,
Yeah,
and then
what I said was
sending
wrong.
that.
Yeah,
Well, what did you say?
I said 44% plus 44% is 44%. No, it ain't. Ignore me. So yeah, I'm summing them all up, dividing it by 11, and then saving it to the display setting, and then I'm saving the mode to 1.
What's that? What does that mean?
So in your Stationpedia, if you search for display, and you'll get the LED display large, you'll see that you've got 3 modes.
Okay.
So we're
So you're
setting it.
telling it to give it to you in percent.
Yeah. So
Okay,
that's
that
why
makes
I'm
sense.
saving the mode. Now another way you could have done this is with this code. So I'll let you have a look at that one.
You think you're so fucking slick. You're so annoying.
So this code does exactly the same, apart from we don't need to do the divide because we're taking an average from all the batteries by using the batch mode average. So it doesn't really
Okay.
matter which way you do it. This one uses one less line of code.
Yeah.
But so
And you still not defined it
yeah, but like I told you, it was
or made comments.
well, the comment is what it is. But yeah,
Yeah,
so
that makes
basically,
sense.
when you're loaded batching, you just whatever works. At the end of the day, it's fine.
But if you use sum, you have to tell it what you want this sum to be.
Yeah, I mean, you can also, depending on your code, you could tell it what you want the average to be. It doesn't matter. It was just that use case you had. We couldn't just write the sum to something because you can't write 3. 3 isn't a true or false value. I
Yeah.
think technically, if you wrote 3, I think it would be true because it's not. It's greater than 1. I think by default it would work, but yeah, it's just bad practice to do that.
Okay.
And then on this side here,
Am I allowed to look at that now?
yeah, this is fine. So this is just a couple of examples. So we spoke earlier about jumping, and this is just me kind of going over the branching. So
Yeah, I've not
obviously,
done this before.
so this is where in your code. So I've got some code here that I've set up. You can have a look at this if you want to.
Branch equal. What does that mean?
So the B by itself just means branch, means go somewhere else. It's basically a jump. The difference between branch and jump is that a jump will just go, whereas a branch will check a condition.
Okay.
So branch equal, basically, if A and B are the same, then go to line C. And C you will just define as whatever line, like number or then a loop. B any is branch not equal, so if A is not equal to B, then branch to C. That's basically just a not. It's reversing the equal. That's all that is. So you know how in Power you put the exclamation mark. That's what that is. Then you've got BGT, which is branch greater than. BLT is branch less than. And then, as we spoke about earlier, you could branch greater than AL. You could also come back to where you were.
So say you're comparing 2 registers, you can say branch equal R0, R1, jump to line 20.
Yeah.
And if they're the same, it'll jump. If not, it'll just go to the next line.
Correct, yeah. That's
Okay.
it. So then what I've done here is got a little bit of code just to kind of show you it in practice. Ignore the transform, I'm just so I can split the
It's
networks.
kind of in the way, isn't it?
It's alright.
Could have put it somewhere better.
It's alright. But if you look at the code, you can see that we're doing the branching. So in here we've got a total of we've got 1 loop and then 2 kind of, I guess, I don't know what you would call them, sub loops. So we've got our start, which is obviously loading from the lever. If R0 is equal to 0, then it's going to branch to red light on. So if it goes down there, you can then say we're saving to the green light, the on is 0, so we're turning off the green light.
Turning on the red light.
Yeah, and then it jumps back to start. and then it does that check again. And then if,
So then it'd get to green light.
well, it would check. So it's only going to branch if it equals to true. So obviously, for example, let's say, I mean, I'll turn it on. Look, I'll show you. If I turn the code on, the red light's currently on. Because what it's doing is it can see that the lever is closed. So it's constantly jumping down to a red light on. It's not even hitting the green light on. It's just skipping that entirely. If I hit the lever, the green light comes on. And so what it's now doing is it goes branch.
Skipping the red light on, going to green light on.
Yeah, because R0 is not equal to 0, it doesn't branch. It'll just continue with the code down.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that's it, really. That's all branching is. Obviously, it can be as complex or as simple as you want it to be, but that's all branching is. And sometimes you'll find that branching, even though it uses a lot more lines of code, actually makes your code a lot more simpler to understand and work. Because you can get into it where you can start like jump relative and all this kind of crap. But yeah, we don't really need to worry about it. I will.
So do you know when you've got different things you jump into, should you always separate that from like your main, so it should always be underneath your main code?
Yeah, so your code will always work top to bottom. So what would happen? So for example, what you could do is you could put red light bit above the start. And then when you like reset the chip, it'll do the red bit first, then go to your start loop, and then it'll just pick up from there. So you would just get like a little blip where the red light would probably come on or off, and then the code would initialize.
So say we was going to carry on writing after the green light on. So say we had a third option. Say we weren't using a lever and we were using something with 3 different options. Yeah. So both red light on and green light on were negative and it'd carry on going down.
Yep.
Would you just continue writing your code underneath there and like always put red light on, green light on, or whatever else underneath?
Yes. So
okay.
On this specific piece of code, my start is my main loop.
Yeah.
Now, as you said, the lever can't be any other state, so this code's always going to branch to one or the other. But if we had to move a third option and didn't give it the third option, then what it would
just carry on.
It would go on this code. It would go to jump to start, and it would just loop that bit of code.
Okay.
Yeah. And then lastly, I've just got some tips, and I already wrote these. Look, so you thought you were being clever, but I already put add comments using dash.
What do you mean keep line usage under control?
So it doesn't matter why you kind of like learning the code, but as we discussed, like for example, you've only got 100. Well, you've got 128 lines to play with in your code. If you're writing a really complex code and you need more than that, well, you're going to have to use multiple ICs and it gets complicated. So, for example, let's say you were using 100 to all the lines of code, but you needed one more line. If you were using the sum to load the batteries, switch to average, and you save a line.
Yeah.
You haven't got to do the dividing.
And you can add comments onto the same line as your code as well, don't you? So you don't have to use a whole line for a comment.
You can, yes. You should always put the comment at the end of the line, otherwise the comment will be the entire line. Yeah. Obviously, change pin when the housing is powered off because you don't want to write to all your devices.
Do you know if you're taking the chip out, should you always turn it off?
If you take the chip out, wherever your code was, it will freeze at that point.
So it don't matter.
It doesn't really matter now, because if you turn it off, it'll just do the same thing. In an ideal world, if you're taking the chip out, make sure you're not doing it on anything that's too important or that's going to fail the second you take it out. Save to DB.
What if you take the chip out? I thought it just carried on in the same state you just said.
No, it stops. So, like, say for example, you've got a code that was turning on a filter on or off. If it turns the filter on and then you take the chip out, that filter is going to stay on.
Even if it needed to turn off.
Even if it needs to turn off. So then obviously you've got issues because something might be happening elsewhere in your base.
So the best thing to do then is to take it out, put it in, import the code. So you say you're using a laptop,
Hmm.
put the chip back in, do your code, just take it out to export, and then pop it back in. So it was out for as little time as possible.
Oh yeah. So if I want to make a change to my code, take the chip out, import it, put the chip back
Yeah.
for it to carry on where it was. Yeah. And depending on your code, obviously that may also have negative effects. Because if you're doing a code where it's in the middle of something, when you pull it out and put it back in, it's going to start again.
But how do you bypass? How do you get past that?
You just got to write your code to a point where it's not really an issue. So, for example, on my Larry one, what it does is rather than, because I could tell Larry, oh, start at point 0 and work from there. But if it gets to point 14 and I take it out and put it back in, it's going to go back to point 0. So what I told it to do was load where you currently are and start from there. So it doesn't matter where it is. If I pull the chip out and put it back in, it will carry on from where it left off.
Okay.
So it's just about writing your code in a more efficient way, really. Save DB for troubleshooting. So obviously you can write anything to the DB setting. So you can write temperature, pressure, battery ratio, whatever. And if something isn't,
That's what we did to figure out what was wrong with your Lara.
yes, because
You thought your RA was something. We
what we
fingered
figured
it
out
to
it
your
wasn't.
DB, and it was something else.
Yeah, so use that for troubleshooting. Label all of your devices. Obviously, if you're loading from a lever, but you haven't renamed it, if you've got 2 levers, you might be loading from the wrong one. And that can cause problems. And then finally, you can reuse registers. It's not a necessity.
If it's not a necessity, why do you nag me about it so much?
It's not nagging.
Because
It's
I don't like using registers,
no.
right? So
And if
I don't like reusing them, so I would rather keep it clear in my head and use the next one.
yeah,
If I do that, you come to check it and you're like, oh, I can't follow this.
no,
Just use the same one.
it's just different. Like
Well, then just learn to play differently with your wife.
your way is fine, but then what happens if you start writing complex code? You run out of registers.
That's fine, but while I'm not doing complex code and while I'm still learning, stop bitching at
I
me,
will stop
saying you
bitching.
don't understand it, you can't check it because I'm using.
It's
Stop.
just different. That's all.
Well, just stop being a dick about it
I'm
then.
not being a dick. I've just set in my ways. I'm like an old man.
Yes, but then you kick off
I don't
and you're like,
kick
oh,
off. I don't
you
kick off.
practically kick off
I
and say you
comment.
can't check my code because you don't
I don't.
understand. You need to keep them the same. Stop.
I don't
I'm
kick off.
learning.
I don't kick off.
Just because you would work that way, others don't. Yes,
Shush.
run off, you bitch.
But yeah, see, we couldn't even get through this without arguing. You see, it doesn't happen. It comes naturally to her.
Not arguing
I
with you.
apologise.
I'm not arguing.
But yeah, then as
Don't
discussed,
apologise on my behalf.
anyone who's watching this and you as well, you can obviously go to that website. That's the Stationeers wiki. There's tons on there, more than what we've gone through. It even goes through the stacks and other things as well. So it's worth taking a look at.
You never showed me that before either.
What, the wiki?
Yeah.
I personally so I looked at it for this just to kind of get some basic stuff, but I'm trying to learn everything myself. So I tend not to try and look at like videos or wikis or whatever. If I really get stuck and I just can't do it, then I will. But so far I've been able to figure stuff out, even if it is a bit ugly. So do you have any questions on like the basic stuff that we've covered? I guess
Don't think
it's kind of a lot. Some of it you've been doing already.
Some of it I just understand a bit better now.
Yeah.
Like the
Okay.
defining.
Mm-hmm.
But I just need you to be a bit more patient.
I can't do that.
So tell me,
I'm not
when we're next playing,
pretend to do that.
tell me what you're trying to achieve and give me a minute just to figure it out.
Fine. I promise I will try. And if it doesn't work, well, what can you do?
Why are you trying to push me off like a child?
I don't know.
Bravo.
But if you've got no more questions, then we'll call it there. So, I know that this was a bit of a weird video. Obviously, a lot of people who play Stationeers probably know more about IC than I do. So this might just be a bit of, oh yeah, he's probably saying stuff wrong. But this is how I think of things. So if this helps anybody, then I'm going to say winner. But this is just my thought process around
Well, it's
stuff.
helped me.
It's helped you.
Enough?
So there you go. Yeah, you are plenty, my darling. I'm sorry. I'm failing at this marriage. But yeah, so to anyone watching, thank you. I appreciate your time. If you got anything out of this, then great. Just let me know, because I guess it is my first tutorial. It's a bit different to normal tutorials because obviously I've got somebody with me who I'm kind of showing. But yeah, if you think you'd like me to show anything else in my own kind of quirky fashion, then let me know. Or don't. Or don't. But yeah, so I hope you liked it. And until next time, take care. And we will see you then. Say bye.
No, because you still owe me a fat tenner.
Well, say bye, you'll get a 15.
Nope.
Oh, you're not getting it then. Bye.